Okay, so finally I'm able to um, make a little video, hopefully that's helpful for folks. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm using a data set that Deshan sent to me, and thank you to Deshan and Leah and Jacqueline for sending data sets on. This clip uses Deshan's data, and well, let me see, let me move this up so you can see it in here also. So I'm going to start from the data set where she was working with getting rid of the missing values and replacing them with means and modes, and kind of documenting that. And what I'm going to do is copy the data from here and paste it into a new sheet. So I make another sheet here and drag it over there, and I'll rename it, and I'll call it working data 2 since I've already made one to illustrate some of the later things. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of look through data set here. Let me slide this over too so we can have all the functions in here. I have already looked through and there weren't any missing values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all the rows in which there's valid data here. Let me slide this up. That, and then paste special those into the new sheet. So I'm going to paste the values first. That, and then I'm going to choose the same upper left corner. I'm going to paste special again, and I'm going to paste the formats like that. Okay, so now we have a new place to work with the data that we were using before. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and get rid of these columns that we're not using. And so when I do this, I'm making the assumption that we're not going to need to be pasting data in again from the working folder from kind of the previous stage. So here's another one, this variable, get rid of that. And I'm just doing this to kind of clean it up so I only have columns with actual values in them. So any columns that would have been empty, I'm getting rid of. And I guess I should draw this over so you can see that's right. If you think you're going to need to bring data back up from working folder from a previous stage, it's better not to be deleting these columns and inserting new columns, but I think that we're probably pretty much done with that, so I'm just going to move forward under the assumption that I can that I'm not going to need to get the data from the earlier stage anymore. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to demonstrate a way that you can recode a variable using math in a way that will help you make it so that it is well, you can just use math instead of like an if statement. So in this circumstance, a disability question, which is do any of your parents or guardians or caretakers have a disability, and it's coded as 2 for no and 1 for yes. And we know that we can look at the code book, but we could also look here as where people were specifying what that disability might be if they had said yes. So we know for sure that the 1 is the yes and the 2 is the 0. I prefer generally for these sorts of variables to have a 0 if it's a no. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a column here, and then I'm going to use a mathematical expression to change the 2 into a 0, and the 1 have it stay a 1. And the way I do that is I put a formula here in F4 that says equals E4 minus 2. Okay, so that'll make that a 0 if it's a 2. And then I'm going to multiply that by negative 1. because if I have a 1 and I subtract 2 from it, I'll get a negative 1, and I want to turn that back into a positive 1. So if I fill this down like that, you can see that now I have a 1 everywhere where there had been a 1, and I have a 0 everywhere there had been a 2. So I'm just going to maybe call this one r dot disability for recoded, and then recoded so no is a 0. I'll just put that note right there as the title of the variable for now. And I guess I could call it v7.5. And so then now I've made that transition. And I actually did it on this one too, although I put it on the other side of the target variable. So in general, you can use basic math to recode things if you need to. If, say for instance, your numbering range from not at all to many times a day or whatever ranges from 1 to 5 or 1 to 6, you might prefer that to go from 0 to 5 so that the true zeros are registered as zeros. So I'm going to wrap this little talk up for now, and the next one will have to do with making indices.